What's up, y'all? Starting a little early today. Well, a little late. But nevertheless, it's another episode of Walk with your boy. Hopefully, you guys get something informative out of it. And, thought provoking. Yeah, man. As usual, pointing out some shit that I see. And it just happens to be coincidental that it's occurring around election season. The season of theatrics, the time of year, or the time in which we falsely support someone to lead us into the next 4 to 8 years with the confidence that they'll do the right thing. But as usual, you can't trust anything. Shit's a fraud, shit's a fake. And you can see it in everything that they do and all the shows that they create. Speaking of shows, there's this new show on Netflix called Rebel Ridge. And yeah, this is a piece of work. And if you've seen the show and you think that it's a good show, well, hey, man, it's all good. But I'm gonna tell you something about this show. It's directed for a certain demographic of people that appeal to this type of these type of antics, i.e., supports a narrative that there's nationwide corruption. Well, to some extent, it is some nationwide corruption. But in others, it's not us that have to worry about it. See, because this power struggle that these people are going through is internal. It's not external. It's not against the people. It's against their people. So we don't realize when they're talking about wars being fought, they're not talking about wars of men and women fighting with guns out in the battlefield and shit like that. That's all fictional. I don't know if people understand it. It's everything fictional. Anything you see on TV, if people are trying to depict it, it's fake in real life. So this movie, Rebel Ridge, is aimed at a certain demographic of people, black women. The reason why I say that is because black men, right, don't deal with emotional semantics. Like pulling on your heartstring type shit, especially when we see stuff that, it's done by other black men. For instance, it's like an external secret that black men don't support other black men. That's an internal secret. And the reason being is because you don't need support from one another. You only need support from your significant other. So another black man ain't gonna support another black man just because they black. It doesn't work like that. All right? There's always some checks and balances, some proving that you have to do. That's why in the games you gotta get beat in. Blood in, blood out. If they loved you, they wouldn't have to beat your ass before they let you into the game. But since you proved your wealth or your worth, now you're allowed to come in and put that worth into action or into some type of motivation to help out the entire group. But black women, they believe in stuff like that. That just because we look the same, we are the same, and we should respect each other just based off of that criteria. And that's flawed because if you got a bunch of people that look the same but don't have anything to offer, then the group comes together, you have a shitty group. You have a worthless group. So this movie is targeted at black women because, first of all, you have a black man, right, that comes in handsome, good shape, doing something good for his black brothers or his black relatives, which is understandable. But then the whole tables turn. And it becomes not just about this black man, now it becomes about this white corrupted, town, which some people would say is a sundown town. But that's a whole nother story, right? And then the movie goes in to say that there's corruption with the police. This is why. You got to watch the movie to see what I'm talking about because they play a lot of mind games with you. They get you emotionally attached to the characters. And don't get me wrong, they did a good job acting. Yeah, he did a good job acting and everything. But it left a lot of unanswered questions. One question is this: why do they always include black people in the shit like this? Back in the day, the same type of scenario was played out in these movies, but we called it Rambo. Same thing. Military veteran comes home, corrupt cops, interfere with his life. He ended up taking his frustrations out on them, utilizing his military tactics and training. All right. And see, what people don't realize is the game is to put you in a state of mind to where you empathize or can relate with the person that is dealing with. Back in the day with Rambo, a lot of people couldn't relate to that. Some Green Beret cat coming into town, destroying the whole town single-handedly. Yeah, they couldn't relate to that. See, so you got to bring some type of cohesion and camaraderie into the story in order for people to relate. Two family members of the same race, an outside person comes in, helps them out, the kids get targeted, and then now they have to work together. It's PSYOP 101. So check it out. They pull these stories or these movies out of their hat trick or out of their chest of stored up propaganda to get you to think a certain way. And they know that people are susceptible to what they see on television. So they bring this stuff out right around, anytime they want to trump up this racial type of support, and they put it out to the masses knowing that a large part of the masses is going to be that demographic that they're trying to reach. And then they watch for the outcome. Because right now, this entire thing was about police reform. And police reform for what reason? Not because they're not doing their job or they're stealing from the public, but because they're harming or disenfranchising a certain demographic of people. And see, when you get people to feel like they have something in common with that, they're willing to do anything. The propaganda leads them down the road to think. So my entire premise on this is that when we're looking at these politicians and these movies that they put out to support these politicians' agendas, we got to become a disinterested person. What I mean by that is, don't associate yourself with the shit you see in these movies or with these politicians and their agendas. The only way to get a clear understanding or a clear idea of what these people are, you have to disassociate yourself from the norm. You got to break away from the herd. See, all the caribou in a herd that's running from the lions can't see that river they about to cross is infested with alligators. Only the one that's in the front. And see, he can't stop because he's being pushed by the whole herd behind him. So it's almost like he's on a path of destruction and don't even know it. And the only way to survive is to ride the wave, knowing that the people behind him or the rest of the herd behind them, they're going to have victims. People are going to fall prey to those gators. And those that can't get across that river fast enough are going to fall prey to the lions. The only way to see that destruction coming is to separate from the herd. The caribou that aren't in the herd can sit back and watch the entire thing occur and be able to see that once they got away from the herd, they were able to move freely. All right? To move freely. Because The attention's not on them. The attention's on the herd. And this is why we continuously are put in groups to separate ourselves from the main goal. The separation is this right here. Even though you're not in a whole group, you're in a group. So the only people that knows what's happening are the victims on each side and the ones in the front and in the back. Everybody in the middle are just following the herd. And what's wrong with this is you don't have no conscientious objectors in this situation. You don't have anybody that can stand back and say, hey, something don't feel right, something don't look right, because nobody's on the outside looking in. So when you're watching these movies and listening to these politicians, because the whole thing about this is persuasion, you need to step back and become a disinterested party. Someone that has no attachment to either side or any message, and just observe what these people are saying. Because they do this every 4 to 8 years. They do this shit to us every 4 to 8 years to get us persuaded to do a certain thing. Now, why is that important? It's because when you have guidelines or guidance in place and people don't like the guidelines or the guidance, they'll tend to, try and disrupt it. And then on top of that, if they can't change the guidelines or the guidance, if they have no power to destroy the rules and regs that are in place, what do? They disrupt it, and they try and put people in place of authority that are going to ignore the way things are supposed to be. So these politicians and these freaking actors that they put in front of us, they are the disruptors. They're not the changers, all right, or the authors or the shapers of our environment and our regs and our rules. They're just the disruptors of it, because rules are set in stone. Okay, and they try to teach us that, no rules set in stone. Rules are set in stone. That's why they're called rules. All right, that's why they call laws. They're set in stone. But you got people that can manipulate that, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to manipulate that, and they feel like if they get enough people on their side, the manipulation will be also as well set in stone. So I think that people need to understand that, especially the people that they're targeting with these messages. And yes, I'm saying it to you, so-called black people. Why are you so important in times like this, i.e., when election season come around? Why are you so important if you're just one small demographic of the whole? Think about it. Why is it so important for you to have to get out and do something? On every time there's a psyop, or why I'm not even going to say a psyop, a message that they deem serious come out, they always target black people, so-called black people. I mean, if we're only just 12% of this 100% demographic, then wouldn't it be smart to concentrate on the other 88% and not the 12%? But it seems like they try really hard to concentrate on that measly 12%, 12, 13% of the population to get their mission or their agenda to go through. And see, if we're paying attention to it, we'll realize that's total opposite of common sense. If I got 100 people, and out of that 100, 12 don't like what I'm talking about and don't want to be involved, then as long as I have the 88%, right, then it doesn't matter to me what the 12% says or does, because we are the majority. The 88% is the majority, and the 12% is the minority. So every time you would assume that the 88% would prevail. So something's not right here. If black people are only 12 to 13% of this nation, then why is it so important to get black people to be involved in this election process? Why is it so important for them to be willing participants in this entire chaos of proving who's right and who's wrong, who's good and who's bad in politics in America? Think about that. The majority would, in reality, control the minority. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because every season they do this. Every 4 to 8 years they do this. Their main target is black people, allegedly, so-called black people. So looking at that would make me feel like there's something special about that 12%, or that number is exaggerated. That number might be exaggerated, all right? Because looking at things from a disinterested point of view, I see that the numbers don't add up. How they say that, most black people, allegedly, so-called black people, abort over 3 million of their children a year. You know what I'm saying? And we lose, allegedly, 2% of our population through violence, police reform, and outright racism, allegedly. You know what I'm saying? Well, that would make our numbers even smaller than 12%, or 12, or 13, or 11. It would make our population even smaller than that if we're losing that many people at such a drastic rate every year. So, that being said, you got to look at this from a disinterested point of view, so you won't be captivated and drugged down by the virtue signaling and race baiting that these people put us in. You know what I'm saying? So I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can learn from breaking away from this stuff. Do not participate. See, because if you're not participating, then their efforts to get you to participate was futile. And all the bullshit that they pull would be useless. And then another thing is too as well, why is it always our people that are trying to persuade us into participating? See, if the case is that we're a small demographic in this whole conglomerate of races here in America, and we're so small and insignificant, then why do you need the support of this tiny majority of people when you have a large majority of other people supporting you? Something doesn't add up. And I don't believe the numbers that they put out about so-called black people's demographics and the number of black people here in this country, as well in other countries. Because to tell you the truth, when does a liar stop being a liar? If they've been lying all their lives. You can never assume that a liar is going to tell you the truth. But you can assume that they'll do one thing, tell you a lie. So why even go down that road with these people and participate in this crap that they're trying to do? Pull us into this race thing every year, and it never works every year. It never works. See, because deep down, they know that they're lying to us, and we know that they're lying to us as well. We talk a good game. Some of us vote, and some of us don't. But the majority of people in the black community don't. Allegedly don't. So I think that's the reason why it's so important to push these agendas like Rebel Ridge and these movies to try and paint some type of agenda that's occurring. And then also, utilize these cryptic ass messages about society, which at the end of the day, you shape society, not them. There's nobody that shapes what your life is going to be other than you. And you are part of society. So if nobody shapes what your life is going to be, and everybody has that same thing going for them, then who's controlling society? Us. Has nothing to do with politicians. Has nothing to do with politics. The rules are set in stone. We just have people that's interrupting and disrupting this, the way the rules are being handled, or the way the rules are being played. And if you know the rules, then you can play the game. A lot of us don't know the rules, so we don't play the game. So I just thought it would be a good idea to come forward and talk about this. Yeah. It's another thing I recognize about young people. Young people aren't being paid attention to enough. At least not the way that they used to be paid attention to. For instance, young people over the past 10 years have been totally ignored. Think about it. Over the past 10 to 12 years, what have young people been doing more than anything? Technology. Technology, technology. Everything with these young people nowadays, within the past 12 years, has been all about technology. Everything is technology based. It's not normal like it was when most of us that were born in the 70s and 80s, where it was all about the parents. You know, if you grew up to be a bad kid, it was because you got bad lessons taught to you by your parents. Nowadays, you grew up to be a bad kid, it's because what's on TV, what's on smartphones, what's on these smart devices, you know, what's happening online. You know what I'm saying? And see, because we've shifted to a hands-off approach with our kids. So they've been ignored for the past 12 years. So they're not even worrying about these kids. This generation of kids over the past 12 years are all, they call them throwaways. These are throwaways. They don't really serve a purpose in society because they haven't had anything to do with society. You know, all the players on these sports teams, they're not even trying to be role models. They're not even trying to be respectable. You know, like back in the day, an athlete that had millions of fans had a responsibility. They had a responsibility to set a good example. Not these days. These guys doing everything they can to disrupt the way these young people think. With the gender conversation, with the race conversation, with the political conversations, these athletes that's supposed to be role models to these kids nowadays, they're trash. They're trash. They don't care about nobody but themselves. And that's the whole reason why most of these kids that are going into these sports, you know, fields are all self-centered, got drug problems, and have all kind of shit going on with them. Our entire culture has been shifted from a natural culture to an artificial one. And it's not going to change until, like I said, these throwaways are dealt with. Now, there are some of these kids that come out of this situation with the gaining of the knowledge and understanding that they have from all of this technology, and they started utilizing it to figure certain things out. But that's a low number, a small majority of people that are doing it. These young people. Most of these young people are falling for shit that doesn't even have anything to do with them. Just like we did when we were kids. When our when we were taught in school that black people were slaves brought over here to America, that doesn't have anything to do with us. Why did they think it was so important to force us to learn that? It's because they wanted us to feel inferior, first of all. And this is not from another race of people. This is not some type of some white supremacy. This is actually what I would consider, some type of black authoritarian type of system. See, because if you were a slave and now you're in a position of authority to teach to your people that we were once slaves, that means that you have the authority to do so, and you're going to make sure that everybody under you understands and fears what being a slave is. But you were a slave, allegedly, and you became an authority figure from being a slave. So how does that work? You see, because I know for a fact that a lot of these policies are pushed about black people and about black history. It's being pushed by our people, by allegedly black people. And the reason why I'm saying allegedly is because I don't believe that we are black people. I believe that we are American people. And we've always been American people. But there's a group in our group that wants us to think otherwise. Now, why is that? Well, as a famous so-called black artist, rap artist said, less is more, and there's plenty of us. Which means that, hey, if we can keep these niggas down, then the few niggas that are up will remain up, holding down, the competition. Because, see, nobody wants to be considered, inadequate or unable. So what they do is they paint this picture that the reason why so many of us are on the low end of the totem pole is because some other race or demographic had put us there. But only a certain majority of us were able to overcome it. That's bullshit. That is bullshit. There's no such thing as a minority of people being held down by a majority of other people. See, because if that was the case, then none of the minority would be allowed to overcome, the oppression. And all this shit about systemic and pandemic and ustemic and, systematic, allegedly racism. It's a construct of make-believe. And the reason why I say that is because it only comes up when it deals with how we are treated. It doesn't come up how we treat other people or treat ourselves. It only comes up when we talk about how we are treated. And see, if that was the case, if everybody was to say, hey, I was treated a certain way because of my race, everybody would have a cause. Every race of people would have some type of reason to complain about some other race of people holding them back. So I don't see that. I don't see every other race complaining about shit like that. What I see is a lot of people are competing to be the most virtuous. Who's gone through the worst? You know what I'm saying? So apparently, no other race has gone through anything, even close to what black people have gone through, so-called black people have gone through. And I think that that's bullshit. Because if we were held back so far and for so long, then why the hell are we where we're at right now? Why are we being sought after to make decisions and to assist in controlling the nation? How are we looked at as the key to this shit? Because believe it or not, they not naming white people for anything when it comes to elections. They just assume that they are already on board. Like, fuck, we ain't got to go after them. We don't have to persuade them to think that their very existence is under attack because of their skin color. It's just assumed that we are the only ones that are being targeted in this nation, and you have no other choice but to follow people that have our best interest in mind. Not the nation's best interest, but our best interest. And that's silly. These black politicians who scream race, 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 hate, hate, hate all the time, wouldn't be in these positions if they were hated and there was that much racism involved. What made them so special that they were able to overcome the racism and the hate and the attacks, that they were able to be in a position equal to those aggressors and attackers and protect all the black people up under them, so-called black people? What set them apart? Did they have some superpower? Are they stronger than us? Are they smarter than us? Oh, were they more wealthier than us? But because all of them are saying that they all came from poverty. Oh, I came from poverty. Watch my parents suffer and all this so I can have a better life. You know what I'm saying? But how did you get to the point where you're at? What suffering did you have to go through that gave you the ability to overcome it? To overcome, the politics and the rules and regs against your people. What strength did you bring to the table? Oh, you just living off the strength of your parents, huh? They're the ones that overcame the struggle, right? To make sure you had a better life. But the place where you saying you have a better life is so bad that you have to fight every year, every 4 to 8 years, to secure a place for you and your people because you're being slowly but surely wiped out of society. That doesn't seem like the case to me. What it seems like the case to me is that we have a bunch of people in position that look like us that don't want to lose that power. Because as soon as we realize that we're not the minority, that we're the majority, and that the odds aren't against us like we think they are, then we'll no longer need their protection. We'll no longer need them to speak up for us, to form these rallies and these organizations to protect the weak black man and black woman, to keep us from being targeted by other races and other demographics. We wouldn't need them anymore. We would be able to do this shit for ourselves. We would feel confident in our communities to police ourselves and our children, because that's who we have to police, ourselves and our children. There's no other demographic of people coming in our neighborhoods destroying us the way we destroy ourselves. There's no other demographic of people from other neighborhoods that make us feel the way we make ourselves feel. Telling some kid that their ancestors were slaves is the worst thing you can do to a young child, to give them that hopelessness at a young age before they even realize that they have the power to think for themselves. That's why it's so hard for us to come out of this shit, because we're taught at a young age, you're nothing. You were never nothing. See? And the reason why you were never nothing is because your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, it's always the grandmothers, it's always the women in the family that had to be strong, not the men. See, that's some crazy shit too I don't understand. Every time somebody says they got the truth, they have to be from their grandmother. What about grandpa? What the hell is he doing? Sitting out under the tree getting drunk, huh? Yeah. Crazy shit, man. This is the psychology behind it is. It's to remove the understanding, the logic away from the community and put in a rational thought processes. See? People that can fix things aren't allowed to come into the community, not freely. They have to taper back. Now, if you're fixing everything, we can't have you fixing all the problems. See, because if you fix all the problems, we're not going to have nothing to fucking complain about. See, allegedly. See, they don't want fixers. They want people to support. They want supporters. See, they don't want to cure. They want to fix or they don't want to fix it. They don't want to cure it. They want to treat it, support it. They don't want it to be gone. They just want it to be controllable. They just want it to be manageable. See? And that's how they treat us. Treat us like pets that can be managed. Our own people do this shit to us. See? And I've been looking at this shit with Trump and Kamala. See, this is the thing that you shouldn't be looking, what I think that we shouldn't be looking at. When you're looking at these politicians and they're saying, hey, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you. Don't look at the person that don't look like you. Look at the person that does look like you and start analyzing them and critiquing them. And you will see what I'm talking about. See, the reason why they have two candidates of opposite race every fucking time, and they've been doing this every time, and they've been doing this way back since fucking Abraham Lincoln. But I'm going to come more recent, since JFK. Did you know that Martin Luther King was considered a candidate running for president when JFK was running for president? No lie. He was a candidate, a supposed candidate that black people would get behind. He had to renounce. He had to denounce even running for office in order for this guy to get his support and become president. JFK wouldn't have became president if the black people of the United States didn't support him to become president. And the only way they did that is by following Martin Luther King. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I am saying that's the facts. That's the facts. See, because everybody was talking about it back then. Even up until the point where I was born and after I became old enough to understand what they were saying. They were still talking about this shit. But you know what the thing is that we don't critique ourselves enough, and we're willing to follow each other just because we look alike. And even if we don't look alike, if we say we are alike, we're willing to follow each other. No research, no understanding, and that's dangerous because when you get a group of people to follow you, just because you say you're one of them, then you're not really following them out of a common understanding of what they're capable of doing. You're following them out of the majority of your people are looking at that we are a herd of people. We are a tribe of people that have to stick together and do whatever the tribe leader tells us to do. And that's never the way black people were. You see all of these systems that we set up in our communities that give certain individuals power over us, end up ultimately failing through corruption, out of ignorance and shit like that. It's because there's always going to be a turning point where people start to break away from the herd and look objectively outside of the herd how everything's going, where everybody's moving. And those people end up, if they have a big enough voice, end up toppling the whole system. And then we fall back into the same shit we fall back into. They can't say that, hey, this person is corrupt. No, it's always the system. There's always some other race of people that's doing this shit. It's always that. But these kids that are coming out today, the throwaways, they're going to be the turning point for us. The throwaways are going to be the turning point for us. The kids that are overlooked, that are considered useless, and only watch TV and play video games and be on the internet and cell phones and shit, are going to be the generation that actually pulls us out of this shit just enough to where we'll be able to survive another couple generations. Because they're so absorbed into what they see that eventually they're going to see what they need to see in order to make the right decision. And they're not going to go out and do this shit that all the other groups have been doing. The throwaways have not actually come forward yet. The throwaways have not come because they're just not becoming adults. They're just now becoming young adults. If you want to know who they are, they're the 16 to 21 group right now. They're the throwaways. They're the ones that they considered useless. Those are the ones that they were trying to get rid of back in the 70s, the parents of these people, so they wouldn't come about. Because they knew they were going to bring forward technology that was going to allow people to be able to get information instantly at their fingertips. And they couldn't stop it. Because not only is it innovation, but it's old technology. This shit that we're doing right now with cell phones is old as hell. They've had this shit out for hundreds of years. And it's been in different types of formats. We're not right now, our cell phones are working off of UHF and VHF. They're calling it digital and Wi-Fi. That's what they're calling it. See, UHF and VHF has been replaced with digital and Wi-Fi. But it's still UHF and VHF. It's still traveling by radio signals. All of this shit. So this technology that we're using right now is old. They knew it was going to be renewed. And they knew that a generation of people were going to be able to come along and identify all of the crap that's been going on and make it public. So guess what they're trying to do? They're trying to make the throwaways obsolete, and they're trying to make them seem like that they're a bunch of nobodies and they cannot go any further than what they've gone already. Why do you think they tried to take them out over this past couple years? Over these past couple years, they try to take out the throwaways. They try to remove them from society. They wanted to be at home and detach from one another because that was happening too quick. The message was coming too quick. So they had to break that shit up. They had to do a timeout. So why not COVID it up? See? Pull them, break them up. We don't need them together right now. Wait until they're older and more manipulated, and maybe then they'll be easier to work with. But I'm telling you right now, most of the crap that's happened over the past 4 years was to harm the throwaway group, the 16 to 21-year-olds. It was used to harm them, to pull them out of society and isolate them from everybody else, to keep them at home, to harbor some of those illnesses that they say that they had or that they gave, to keep them guessing instead of knowing what to do. See, but it didn't work. It didn't work because, see, some of the biggest truths that came out over the past 4 years came out from the throwaways. They're the ones that brought the shit out, utilizing technology. 16 to 21-year-olds brought this shit out. Was purposely, showing people that things aren't what we think they are. All the ideas that came up over the years didn't come from no older person. It came from these young people. And I'm gonna say it. None of these theories that the older people are coming up with can even stand a chance against these younger people's theories. It can't stand a chance. Not even globe earth and flat earth shit even matters anymore to these people. Because they're not looking at that shit anymore. These kids ain't looking at that shit anymore. These new kids that's coming out, they're actually trying to find out what's really going on with the place that we live in. And by doing that, they're going to show all of us old heads and all of us newer kids, right? They're going to show us how we were making a mistake or how we're going to make a mistake. Mark my words, 16 to 21-year-olds. They're the ones that's doing it. That movie, Rebel Ridge, is a psyop, allegedly, to spark the interest of black women, to get them up in arms about a system that has nothing to do with their, I'm going to say, mental illnesses. Has nothing to do with that. And see, the throwaways are going to replace all of these insane, schizophrenic retards that are pushing these agendas. And I'm gonna say it, man. We're not gonna survive this. We're not gonna survive this. The old heads, we're not gonna survive this. Cause see, we've done enough to lose credibility, and we've done enough to put ourselves in a position where we're looked at as being what they call no confidence in us. Old heads and very, very young people, we need to stand aside and let these throwaways take the position that they need to take because they are the next in line, 16 to 21-year-olds. And if you're not in that age bracket, don't try to put yourself in it. Stay out of the way. Leave these people alone. Leave them alone because these people are seriously dangerous. And the reason why I'm saying that is because look at who they're using to push out there with all the violent crimes. None of them over the age of 21. None of them under the age of 16. None of them. They're painting a picture. They're trying to make them seem like they're dangerous. Because over the past couple years, they've been isolated. They've been taken out of society. They've been treated like pariahs. They don't even have a proper, history to look back on like we do, like proms and shit like that we cherished. Dances, sleepovers. They don't have shit like that to look back on to say, I remember this. All they remember is all the fucked up shit that was done to them. And see, what that's going to do is, that's going to drive them to try and understand why. Why did this happen to us? Well, they're going to find out. So stand by, old heads. Stand by. Because we fucked the shit up so too long. If you're over the age of 50, your time is done. You need to move aside and let these young kids come up. The only thing you can do to help yourself, not help them, help yourself is to start telling the truth. Start telling the truth. Start letting it out. Start leaking it. Be a whistleblower for your generation. Be a whistleblower. All those people before me, before the age of 50, that are already died, or they're getting ready to die. See, they never came forward and told the truth. They taking this shit to their grave. They taking all of this propaganda and falsehoods to their grave about the war, about racism, about everything, about the wars. I can't say that more. They taking all that shit with them to the grave. You know how hard that's gonna be for them to, deal with in the afterlife? That they lied their entire young life, all the way up into their old lives, and they never told the truth. Man, that's gonna be a serious thing they have to deal with in the afterlife. That's why it's gonna take them so long to get back here. It's gonna take them a long time to get back here. See, they're gonna be dealing with that shit by themselves for a long time. For a long time. And all these new kids that's coming up right now, all these new kids that's coming into the world, they're gonna be the old souls that happen to get through it and coming back. That's gonna really, really, really want to make up for the mistakes they made in the last life. They're gonna really, really want to make up for that shit. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about forgiveness. And it's all about telling the truth. None of this shit is about good and evil. It's all about forgiveness and telling the truth. So these old folks, they believe in that hell and heaven and shit. And that God's gonna come back and judge everybody. No, buddy. It's not an all thing. It's not a nationwide or a worldwide thing. It's your judgment. That's a personal thing. You gotta serve that yourself. And there ain't gonna be no judgment like you got a court of law. No. It's gonna be a judgment though. So you gotta deal with that yourself. Ain't nobody gonna be able to vouch for you. None of that shit. So if you living with a lie and you know that it's a lie and you rather die with it than to confess it, you in for it, homie. You in for it. But check out that movie Rebel Ridge. And like I said, it's geared towards the ladies because that's what they like to do. They like to go after the so-called weakest first and then let the weakness, permeate throughout the group and, affect everybody else or infect everybody else. And then make them weak too as well. So they fall victim to the manipulation too. And who is they? Us, men. Men, we got to stop allowing ourselves to become anything other than what we're meant to be. And that's fixers. That's problem solvers. That's what we are. We're fixers and problem solvers. When a man has a problem and he know how to fix it, that's the first thing they start doing. Let's troubleshoot this shit and let's fix it. Why cry over spilled milk when we can milk the cow and get another glass? So that's why they go after the women. I'm sorry to say it, but this actually is a psychology that was created by women. Women that were honest and truthful and knew about their flaws. Women that understood the nature of what a woman is. A woman is someone that feels for everyone. That's why they should never be in situations where difficult decisions need to be made. See, especially when it's life or death, live or not live. Women should not be involved in stuff like that. They're not equipped. See, and when they do become equipped, it's harder, it's harsh. It's like they're overcompensating for something. Because now they've corrupted the being of who they really are. They corrupted it to become something else. That's why women could be some of the most harshest judges and the most lethalest executioners. See? Versus a man, off with his head. Chop it, move on to the next subject. That's a fixer right there. You see what I'm saying? A woman wants you to suffer it, to feel it, and make it last for as long as she can. See? And we think that that's the way things supposed to be. No, man. No. You wonder why? What they call it when you go to prison? Where you're supposed to be reformed or some shit. You know why reform can't happen? Why men that go to prison can't change their ways? It's because a lot of these men that's in prison, they in prison for their women. And while they're in prison, their women is still convincing them, coercing them, training them, teaching them how never to get out. And then while he's in prison, she's teaching another one. She's making him into a prisoner. See, because women don't let go. And that's the hard thing, especially when it's in a negative context. When you can't let go, enemies become lifelong enemies. Punishments become lifelong punishments. Torture becomes a lifelong torture. See, but with men, we rather just cut it off and move the fuck on. See, that's the whole thing about men that make us the opposite of women. See, because we know how to fix things. They don't know how to fix things. They know how to feel for things and feel for others. See? But when those feelings are manipulated by that man trait to fix things, it becomes corrupted. See, that's how a mother can turn her son into a killer. That's how a mother can allow her daughter to be raped by her man. See? That's how shit like that can happen. And that's also how a woman or a mother can kill her unborn child. Or, forgive me, unalive her unborn child. So, I hope you guys got something for this. Check out that movie, Rebel Ridge. And believe me, look at it from a disinterested point of view. Don't let, race, color, creed, get your mind caught up. Just look at the messages they're trying to give you. And look at the up-to-date messages that they're putting in there. Because believe it or not, this movie was created this year. And it was created for a specific point. It was created for this point in time to convince us around election season that black people need to be involved in removing a certain demographic of people from society, either by force or by finance. And with that, I'm going to call it a day, guys. Y'all have a good one. Appreciate you for showing up. If you did, appreciate you for watching. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. If you don't like what I'm saying, leave a comment. Comments are always open. I'm not blocking anything. And let's have a dialogue. Until next time, salutes.